Well, we had a momentary lapse in internet connection here, but now we're back. And so thank you, Kelly and Van and Sugandhi, each for giving those wonderful reports on the role of transmission in your own awakening process. I found it just absolutely transporting. And many of you said things that pointed us in the direction of how you use transmission in your teaching work. So we'll do this as a kind of more of a panel discussion than individual speakers. So Van, why don't you start us off? Everyone can just unmute themselves now.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Also to say, if there's more Kelly wants to say, I want to hear more. But, he was in the middle of something and it went, okay.
All right. No, I'm good. You could go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so let's see. Well, one thing I'd like to say is I like what you said, Kelly, about everyone has a transmission, and even animals. And there's let's say when there's a clarification in what we call whole being realization, which is more a remembering or an unforgetting of the paradoxical unity of the absolute and the relative, of human and divine, the transcendental and the local, then so it's more a remembering. And so we all have a transmission, and let's say when there's a further clarification where we can abide and have more steady access to feeling, abiding as that simultaneous, paradoxical, seamless unity that is the wholeness of divine being, then that has a certain other quality or amplified or intensity of transmission that, and since we're two human animals, let's say in terms of transmission with a teacher and a student, the receiver is going, hey, that's another human being in this awakened, living this paradoxical unity of being, and I am that also. And this, it's a kind of love communion. I love, like what's so Gandhi said, that transmission is love. It's awakened conscious love. It's a love connection, and love is this holistic relationship that happens. And so then the person gets resonated, osmosis, they get attuned to this unified being, this wholeness of being. And so we're just being that together, being to being, that we're already that wholeness of undivided being, the total being. So there's, so now I, in my early teaching work, thought longer gazing was better. So there are times I gaze 5 minutes, in individual sessions, and 20 minutes, I did this one, 20-minute gazing. I also enjoyed mutual gazing, what became mutual gazing. Now, when I first began teaching back in 1996, it was looser, no rules. So I would have other people gaze in a second birth, and what we call mutual gazing, other people gazing with, people gazing with one another. And then there became a lot of rules. And I go, oh my God, there's too many rules. They're restricting the gazing. Also, just a little tangent. We talk about this open-eyed gazing, that form of transmission. Transmission also happens when your eyes are closed. You can have closed-eyed meditation and transmission. Then there's the whole group, everyone attending the sitting. It's a whole group transmission field. It's a resonant, amplified resonant field. Then there's also a further quality, transmission beyond the physical space of a sitting, where there can be transmission this kind of magical transmission beyond time and space, where you're not in the same physical room or the same time. So there can be an ongoing connection with an awakened teacher, and you have availability to, let's say, their more cosmic or transcendental body. I think the more fully realized a teacher is in, you know, advanced stages of whole being realization, then there's maybe a greater potency of this transmission, the 24/7 cosmic body, transcendental body connection that can happen. But these are other aspects of transmission beyond just the one-to-one open-eye gazing that we tend to associate with transmission in Trillium Awakening. So back to when there were all these rules, I wanted to loosen it up again. So it was a number of years back where I drafted a proposal to open up gazing within a framework. And so there was teacher-student gazing, and then peer mutual gazing and non-peer mutual gazing. This is so the mentors could do gazing. So that got adopted. So gazing got more liberalized again. And so now we have mutual gazing regularly at many of the sittings. So I do that at my sitting, and like when I gaze with the participants, then there'll be mutual gazing among the participants. And I think that further enriches the sitting and makes it more potent. And the other thing that in my early days of teaching, there was a bias, like kind of, you know, if you have the second birth, there's a certain betterness about being in the second birth as not being in the second birth. You know, it's a subtle kind of spiritual politics. And in further deepening, then I'm going, everyone is divine being. There's no one that's not that. It just, they may not remember the fullness, the wholeness of being simultaneously human and divine and how they're married together. But it's still true. There's only the divine being. There's only the divine self. It is this one utterly total and whole unified field. So the other thing that I came up with, being devotionally oriented, I came up with another name. I call it beholding the beloved. So in gazing, it's like I, as an embodiment of the Supreme Beloved, I'm gazing with another embodiment of the Supreme Beloved. There's the Supreme Beloved is gazing, communing with another manifestation of the Supreme Beloved. So it's being a deep being communion of beholding the Beloved. So recognizing the inherent divinity of me and the other person, which is myself. There's only the one self. And so I call it beholding Beloved. And so this, you could say, brings a more devotional flavor, but it's also remembering we're all divine, and ain't no better that you got the whole being realization formally or not. You're already this fullness of, you're a full manifestation of the sacred beloved or divine being. And so that's also where love is more important. So you already love the person in fullness, and this is a love communion. So that, you know, it is an important part of the sitting. Now, the other thing is to say, even when we're talking and answering questions, then there's transmission and a resonant field happening then also. It's not just divided, okay, now we'll do transmission. Okay, now we're gonna do talking. It's all happening. Then even then after the sitting, then you could say the transmission can continue if there's still a sensitivity and an attunement to that. So I like to have longer, I do a little longer gazing. When I haven't held sittings in a while, but I want to start doing some more teaching work. Now, you know, now that I'm retired. But so if there's, I would have smaller sittings, could be 4 to 6 people. So I'd want to gaze longer. So I might gaze definitely 1 minute, but maybe 3 to 5 minutes with each person. And then everyone else in the sitting will then pair off and be gazing, doing the mutual gazing while I'm gazing around the room with individual participants. So I like the longer gazing. And then I also would do longer closed eye portions. So we could just steep in it and let the personal self dissolve and just melt into the unified field, and let the love intensify and the bliss intensify and the Shakti intensify. And so you can get more drunk in that. And the other thing I'd like to say, in waking down, there was a thing where you want to stay embodied. You want to be present in and as a body, the down work. And, I did about 8 years of one-to-one therapy. And I also still deal with, I have, some people already know this, I have a version of obsessive compulsive disorder. It's like a exaggerated paranoia and fear of dangerous chemicals. And I have some version of a hoarding disorder. I still have all that. So what was the point of this? So in so I forget what I was going to say about that, but this is part of the whole sandwich that each of us is, where this extreme is like this tantric embrace of being divine and very human. And so that's what I was going to say. Love. So there's about being down. Okay, so I was down in this shit, and had to deal with it. But then we can get overly obsessed with our psychology. I got to fix it. And I did therapy. It's helped. I continue to do therapeutic things that help. That we also want to remember our sacred side, our divinity, that in being, there's this inherent perfection, and not get obsessed about perfecting the personality. And so then we used to focus, well, stay down, and you don't want to be too like ascended or out of body. I think there is a place for that once there's a sufficient integration with the wake down, shake down, or sacred reconfiguration of relaxing attention from the body mind, and have periods where you can let the body mind dissolve, melt, let attention, feeling open, and abide as the whole divine unified field, and even the bliss intoxication, let yourself just melt into that inherent truth and this inherent wholeness of being. So I think there's definitely, that's very important, and that is something that evolves as we the unified field gets more prominent, and the personal self can get almost engulfed or immersed in that, and then the personal self, there are periods when it gets more diffuse, more melted. And so that is an important part of advancing, I think, as a practice in more advanced stages of whole being realization. So the closed-eyed part in meditation and during sitting or in your own personal meditation, I think also important just to let yourself melt and enjoy that dissolveness, or this communion becomes more merging into that unified feel, the primordial oneness that is at the heart of being. So I think I'll just leave it there for now. I think that's enough.
That's great, man.
We'll have further dialogue.
Great, thank you. Sugandhi, what role does transmission play in your teaching?
I've melted. I have to reconfigure myself for a minute here. I have kind of maintained, I also have a deep connection with the Divine Mother. That's how I think of the divine. Let's see. So in one-on-one sessions, I always invoke the Divine Mother within myself before the session. And I ask, to have her words come out of my mouth. If any words are spoken, may it be hers. And so I have a little prayer. I have a little ritual that I do before a session. And I always gaze with the person if we're online. I don't have in-person capabilities here in the middle of nowhere where I live, so it's mostly online, or unless I'm teaching at a weekend or a retreat. So we'll do either meditation and gazing or just gazing. And while I'm doing that, often the invocation that I do is during that meditation or at the beginning of gazing. I'm sort of internally and mentally doing that connection with the divine. And at the same time, I feel the other person in my body. I tune into my body and I tune into the other person in a bodily way, which is... and what happens is I wait, I gaze until I feel the person just drop in and settle. And I can feel that. I guess you would call me an empath. Some people call that empathic. And able to feel other people energetically. And this is very helpful in teaching because there are times when I'll start feeling fear or I'll start feeling feelings that I know are really not mine. So it kind of helps me to know where the other person is. So we start right out with the transmission kind of field, gazing, meditation, and then during the whole session, I'm consciously kind of holding the field of love. The way I do it is I relax. I keep one part of my mind or one part of my being is relaxed into the silence where I live, with this deep, deep silence here. So I relax one part of my being into that silence, and the love is just there. And so I hold that. And that takes some effort on my part to maintain that kind of focus. It feels great too. But I think, so I'm responding to the person, and we're communicating to each other from a kind of a non-normal place. It's not just a conversation for me. When I'm teaching, I'm deeply listening with my body, holding this field of love and feeling a lot of love for the person that's speaking. And also, I guess, it's even a kind of a wider perspective emerges. So I am able to kind of see the bigger picture of whatever's being presented to me. And sometimes I can reflect that back a little bit. And it's really is sort of a channeling. It's not really channeling, but I kind of wait and make sure that what I'm saying is real, what I really want to say. So I'm kind of careful about that. I feel a lot of responsibility kind of in this situation. A lot of times people come to me with deeply felt growing edges that I want to respond to with the deepest truth that I can come forward with, and that is aided. The whole field of the sacred container just arrives, and that magical saying things you don't even know you're going to say, and they happen to be the thing that opens the door further, happens in that kind of magical field. It's like painting. When I paint, I'm not thinking, and I'm just creating. I'm just letting my brush do the work, and I may have an idea that I started out with, but oftentimes it goes off in whatever direction it goes off in. So it's painting, the image led. The image arrives on the canvas, and then I work on it more consciously. So this is student led in that sense. It's like they're leading where we go, and I'm holding them very deeply. So what else do I want to say? I do sort of focus on, I like to, people come from their sharings in different ways. If I like to feel the connection between mind and body, and I often do. It's ironic and kind of interesting to me that most of the people that have come to me are people that have, oddly and magically, things that my issues, they almost come to me with my issues. And so I recognize them, and I'm careful to know that whatever it looks like my issue might not be. So I let them expound, and I ask questions, and we look at it with curiosity and kind of examine whatever's coming up from a new, open place, for certainly. But there's a lot of resonance, and I feel even that is the larger field of being transmitting into my practice. It's bringing to me what I need to hear, and therefore it's bringing me people that need to hear the words that I have to say, or that are coming through my system. So it can be, just very much a part of the deep mutuality that happens in teaching. I think in teaching it's really important for the teacher to be willing. There's a lot of, Van has pointed towards this, but what I think of as willingness is be a willingness to be open to something greater happening. There's a willingness to be vulnerable, to be in our deepest core nature with another person. But the teacher has to have the willingness as well. It's not like they're doing it. It is like they're doing it, and I'm letting them lead. It's all about them on the one hand. On the other hand, I have to be willing to feel all the whatever's coming up for me, and hold that too, and in sometimes a very vulnerable way, which makes it a rich field for both of us to kind of lean into the present moment and what's arising. And I feel a lot of deepening in my own awakening through the process of teaching. It's quite a beautiful process. So that's about all that's coming up for me right at this moment.
Oh, that's great. What struck me listening to you speak was, I'm not sure I'll be able to articulate it because I felt it so strongly. It's like when we're teaching, especially in one-on-one sessions, like we're really teaching out of the paradox. There is really no separation. It's all arising in the field of being. The student is arising in the field of being. We're arising in the field of being. And that resonance that comes up, where they're articulating something that is we also need to hear, is just all in that field of transmission at the same time that we're holding them as their own unique arising, a manifestation of consciousness of their own unique human being. And we are our own unique human being. So it's a really beautiful way that you wove together some of the things also that Van was talking about.
Yes, and I would say one step further, we are also only one human being together. Well, right. Like what Van was saying, there's just like we're both coming at it, but there's this beautiful unity that comes out. And I just feel over the months of working with someone, the love field just grows exponentially. And so, I just feel like it's so easy. It's just so easy. It's so easy to love the student that just happens just automatically. It's not even a thought. It's more just part of the flow of it.
Spontaneous arising. I'm thinking of Alan says, it's like there's 7 billion people in the world and 7 billion cells in the body, that we're just one body and we're each little cells fulfilling our function, at that moment. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Mm-hmm. Kelly, what have you got to share with us about the role of transmission in your teaching practice?
Yeah, thank you. I just feel, both Van and Sugandhi, very rich sharing. So I had all sorts of percolations as you both were sharing. I guess for myself, especially lately in my life, I've been holding a similar sort of focus and intention for both my life and my work, not just within Trillium, but beyond that, that I hold this intention of both manifesting my own kind of deepest soul purpose, as well as helping others do that. And then also realizing my deepest spiritual realizations, as well as holding that for others. So that's a common intentionality I have in my work with people, in my life in general. So in the context of that, I've noticed that I think the transmission is essential. And when I say that, I mean like relationship is essential. Like some of the stuff, I mean, you could read in a book and then you could think certain things and then maybe you could somewhat glimpse some of it. But really, why I think our work is so unique and also it's different in a lot of ways is it's about relationship, right? We form unique relationships with the students we work with. And within that relationship, there's a sort of energetic communion that happens. And that communion can happen not just when we're meeting with the student, but long after, almost like the way, I like the metaphor of all of us being like cells in a body, almost the way like neurons fire and wire together, right? There's some sort of ongoing bond there. And just off of what Van and Sugandhi were talking about, I was thinking about there's these studies, it's called the Maharishi effect, where these meditators were in like Washington, D.C., and they meditated for a certain amount of time. And you saw the crime rate drop significantly during that amount of time. And that to me is like collective transmission, right? It's that when people start resonating and transmitting certain qualities, that emanates out into the field. And even like, for example, I live in San Francisco. If a bunch of us got together, had a retreat here, and we're really resonating in that field reverberates out beyond just the group. It reverberates out into the whole environment in some way. And people who are, even people who aren't open, but people are somewhat open, maybe they really take it in. And other people who aren't that open, maybe aren't as influenced, but maybe it even affects them some. So that's kind of one piece of how I see transmission and teaching. It's interesting that both Van and Sugandhi also mentioned this Divine Mother connection, because I also have a deep connection with the Divine Mother. And for me, she's given me a lot of transmission herself. That I've worked in a lot of shamanic circles, totally unexpectedly. One time working in a shamanic circle, I felt this presence in the room, and I asked it who it is, and the presence responded back that it's Kali. And that started a whole long dialogue, and a dialogue with me and her, where I'm like, well, you could be a figment of my imagination. You could just be, a byproduct of my brain. And she lovingly and playfully has taught me that that's not the case, that she's much more than our brain or my imagination. And she has a lot to teach us, and really to teach humanity, is what she shared with me, that we're in a sort of transitional time, a pretty dark phase, where humans think they're just this material body, and that when you die, the body dies, the consciousness ends. In a lot of ways, she's told me that that's very temporary and quite a delusion that's creating a lot of havoc and negativity in the world. and that actually our birthright are these divine souls, these divine beings, and that she wants humanity to remember that that's who we are, and that the more that they can resonate within that sort of field, that she can actually access them more, and she can provide her transmission more, so that humanity is more receptive to it. So I think that's central too, that I feel like her transmission is sort of embedded within my soul in a way, given how formative my interactions have been with her really over the past 10 or so years. I've had this ongoing relationship with her, and my soul nature is very much linked up with a lot of like Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and different sort of states of consciousness. I feel these connections with these subtle level beings. And what's interesting is that these subtle level beings also have transmissions, and they're here to help and teach. A friend of mine, he works in with some shamanic traditions in Peru, and he talked about like literally encountering these subtle level beings that provide him with these energetic transmissions, that they would actually implant it into his heart, and he would almost feel like electrocuted. And with some of these ceremonies, he's pretty oriented in the kind of Western scientific worldview, but he's had a lot of experience in these. So he was curious, like he saw these sort of indigenous looking people in the environment during the ceremony, and he was so entranced, and like he wanted to see, is this just happening in my imagination, or is this like really out there? So he asked another person in the ceremony, what do you see there? And what he saw was like an indigenous looking man smoking a cigarette. And he said to another participant in the ceremony, what do you see there? And the person went like, oh, an indigenous looking man smoking a cigarette? So it's almost like we're kind of, right now, I think we're in this transition point when we're starting to open up to a lot of dimensions and realms that are way beyond, much more vast than some of these materialistic views out there. So I think as we all evolve together, I think we're going to realize there's a lot of different forms of transmission happening, and that the more we can open to that, even those domains can help in our own evolution and our own development. That's about it for me.
Wow, that was wonderful. I'm struck listening to you, Kelly, and listening to the other two, to Sugandhi and Van as well. About the word transmission. It's so evocative because we're talking so much about resonance. And I'm thinking of, Amma uses the metaphor that it's like you're just tuning the dial on the radio, and then you pick up the wavelength. So that the more we open ourselves to transmission, the more we're open to everything that's transmitting in the world. And we're tapping into that all the different levels and layers and Davies. And I know I went to Peru, Sugandhi and I went to Peru, and we went to the place in Bolivia. I think it's I can't think of the name of it all of a sudden, but it's the wall through which they believed that the Inca came, the gods came. And so you stand and you put your head in this little indentation. And I had a particular experience. And then a couple of years later, I read a book about a man who was claiming his shamanic heritage, who was born in Bolivia. And he described to a T the exact experience that I had in that place, in that time. So, transmission is so big. And it's so important not to get too bogged down into the materialization of, can we quantify it? And yet there we see it's been quantified in this, the Maharishi effect that you mentioned as well. So it's quite magical. And it says in the orientation course, it's the X factor in our teaching. And I think that's really true. We're helping students to, and each other, to continue to refine our ability to perceive fully in the whole field of consciousness.
Absolutely. Well said. Well said.
Well, any final thoughts before we wrap up this conversation? Van and Sugandhi, anything you want to chime in? Please feel free.
Yes, I'm inspired. I'm very excited. I think, well, one thing, it's like there's, besides the discriminative sage in me, there's a devotional mystic in me, and it's wonderful and magical. And by funny coincidence, how this panel got put together. And we're all Divine Mother people. And so to hear Sugandhi, how she does her sessions, I was going, oh, that's so beautiful. Oh, love. And you know, I pray to the Mother too, you know, and I've kind of had to keep, before in the past, keep this quieter. And so it's wonderful to be able to, you know, come forward more.
Yes.
So it's very beautiful. And so, you know, I see let's say this, what I might call the Supreme Divine Mother, as the womb of existence, like the heart womb of existence, and not just as a big deity. And there's what I call paradoxical prayer, where I pray to the Divine Mother and I am her. We all am her. The other thing I wanted to say, that let's say the love and bliss and living divine Shakti current, that in the past has been called distractions from consciousness, from the transcendental awareness. It actually aids the embodiment process. It aids being down, because it makes bodily human existence more pleasurable. So I mentioned the, you know, the neurotic issues I deal with. Well, I still, with this bliss and love, bliss intoxication, it made being alive worthwhile, happy, like you're in love. And then you can bear the you know, the difficult challenges more easily, and then also have a sense of our inherent divinity and sacredness, and being held in the arms of the love of the Mother. The universe is a friendly place, you know, and as a traumatized little kid, it's like, it's a scary place, feeling like a trapped little animal going, ah. And so this is part of healing that is deeper beyond just psychology and therapy, which I found very helpful and essential. And if people have deep wounding, I do recommend, you know, therapy, finding a good therapist that you resonate with. And it's wonderful that Kelly's in the, you know, the psychology field and teaching, and has that background and skill. Then final thing, I want to give a little technique to help with gazing, either in your own meditation or when you're gazing. This is a little like trainer wheels. It can be helpful as a start. You may not need this, but just a very summary version. I call it dual simultaneous feeling. So so just in summary, I would relax the body mind, just let myself be grounded in and as the body mind. And more likely might be doing this with my eyes closed. And then this is also going to become part of gazing and meditation, if you can incorporate it there. And then open feeling. So an important component of communion, the awakening process, as well as just enjoyment in awakened life, is opening and feeling, like unrestricted, unconditional feeling. You could even say it's love, just absolute embrace, unconditional feeling, moment to moment. You're letting the body mind be as it is, second to second, letting the feeling be open. And then from that relaxation and open feeling, just allowing everything to be as it is, arising in the moment, then I feel the divine unified field in which the body mind is arising, that it's held in. And I feel that, open and feeling to that. It's a form of communion. And then I let myself feel both at the same time, the body mind and the unified field, dual simultaneous feeling. And you could do that for a while. And then you could relax attention off the body mind. So I'm abiding in that and relaxing attention on the body mind. Let the body mind just temporarily melt and dissolve into the unified field. So it just becomes one totality, one supreme field, this primordial oneness, and just temporarily let this body mind be immersed in that and just dissolve. And so there's only the supreme unified field of divine being of the mother. And then have that enjoyment. And you can do that for a while, and then you just bring yourself back into the room, into the body. So that's a little trick of feeling the paradox. With the paradox, you abide in it, in this unified field, then you abide as it. We all am that. And so that's one of the little tricks. You're, in a way, feeling two things at the same time: our infinite nature, our finite nature, the body, unified field. And then they're both, together, simultaneous paradox. So that's a little technique for that you could use with oneself in individual meditation or in gazing with another. So I just wanted to offer that. And this thank you, Subhaga, for putting this together and organizing this. It's just a magical happening. And you could see the beauty of the diversity of the teachers. I mean, I'm inspired to hear how you work with students, Sugandhi, and then the perspectives that you bring, Kelly. And I'm sure so many of the other teachers could, have this be similarly rich. And that, again, to put in the other commercial, that's the great diversity, the spiritual diversity of Trillium Awakening. And there's this huge umbrella so that we can, this whole, all these flavors and qualities of realizers of whole being realization can be teaching and sharing this with others with love.
One spirit, many unique voices.
Yes.
And really the cool thing is you don't really even have to choose. You just have to kind of look and feel with your body and think, oh, maybe that one. And it will be perhaps that one. Might take a couple of tries, but there's a way in which, like, look at us, like you say, we're all connected to the Divine Mother, and here we are randomly in this panel together. Yeah. I'm just saying that because, I used to get really nervous, thinking, well, how can I get the right one? How can I find the right one? That, the right teacher for me. But really, that's going to come to you. That will come to you. Just open yourself up by looking at the pictures and reading the bios or whatever, just see and listen to yourself, and just go where you moved. It will be at least correct for the moment. Yeah.
You can have one main teacher and have other adjunct teachers, in Trillium, so you can work with more than one teacher in Trillium if you want to also. Some people.
Yeah, or move from, some people move from teacher to teacher to teacher. They have one teacher for a while and then they move to somebody else because somebody else is drawing them. Their particular way of manifesting the awakening process or whatever suddenly becomes intriguing. They run across them and they'll move over there for a while, go back. It's all good. It's all good. everybody has their own process and their own way of getting there. Mm. There's so much more to say too. Thank you for sort of pressing me to be here, and yeah, I'm really struck by how much more there is that we could say, and how much more there is that we're going to discover about transmission, about the field of transmission. You know, I'm very intrigued by Kelly's sort of transpersonal awareness, some kind of communication with unseen beings is also present in my life. That's very mysterious, and I'd love to know. I think more about all of that is going to come to light in the future as things continue to change and open. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Subhaga, too, for organizing this and putting in the energy to make it happen. I think it's a real gift to the community and others.
Thank you, Kelly. I can just see a whole series of conversations. I really liked having us all in the same screen room this way in this last bit. It really feels good to feel the enhanced transmission field and to feel the flavor of each of your individual unique beings showing up. Has not been easy to make this happen, this particular panel, so thanks for your patience. And thanks to all of you who are watching this at whatever time that may be. We hope that it's useful for you. And remember to visit the Trillium Awakening website and see what's happening there. Find your teacher, find your people. Thank you very much.